Cui bono. Translated into English means to whom is to benefit. Or in other words, follow the money. And to follow the money in the case of the Agape Ministries would uncover a charlatan, a false prophet, a cult leader, a man who manipulated minds, tore families apart, and demanded absolute obedience and power from his followers, all while creating what was described as his own paramilitary bodyguards with a stockpile of weapons before absconding the country with an empire worth millions of dollars. How is it possible then that this modern-day malevolent Messiah has avoided all criminal charges and avoided ever having to face the one remaining charge for assault while holed up in an island paradise? Indeed, his own imagined promised land, brought to life on the back of lies, tears, fear and tyranny, where he continued to reign over his flock, decreeing the wrath of God upon those who opposed him. The telling of this case has felt more like a bizarre and twisted fairy tale. Perhaps it would be better to be titled Bed Frames and Boomsticks, or Rocco in Promised Land, or maybe just The Fraudster's New Cash. Oh, how I hope this one has a true fairy tale ending in this, the next episode of Just Lawful.
Adelaide is the perfect place to set a horror story. You know why all those films and books are always set in sleepy conservative towns? Because sleepy conservative towns are where those things happen. Exorcism, omens, shining, poltergeists. Adelaide is Amityville or Salem, and things here go bump in the night.
Indeed, welcome back to Just Lawful, where things do indeed go bump in the night. My name is Daniel Panozzo, and I'm again joined by my co-host, Sean Fewster. Sean, how are you?
Look, Daniel, I'm good. I'm glad that the signature's quite loud because it covered the sound of me laughing at bed frames and boomsticks.
You're more than welcome, Sean. On the back of that, a huge thank you to everyone who's listening. Huge thank you to everyone who's tuned into our previous episodes, whether that's been through the 5AA podcast or indeed on iTunes and Spotify. If you haven't heard our previous episodes, then we would strongly encourage you and be greatly appreciative if you could head straight over to iTunes, Spotify, subscribe, rate, review us. That'd be wonderful. Give us a 5-star rating. That's how you can obviously help us get our work out to the podosphere and the masses, as we like to say, and also catch up on our journey so far.
Oh, getting our word out to the masses. That's very Brother Rock of you there.
It is somewhat Brother Rock of me. I do hope not to be that malevolent Messiah that I mentioned earlier. However, let's dive straight back into this one as we're going to try and, hopefully have that fairy tale ending I talked about, Sean, at the end of our last episode.
Never knew you to be an eternal optimist, Daniel.
Delusionally optimistic, I believe, is a term often used with myself, Sean, or just naive, one of those. Let's sort of pick up where we left off as we dive into this. We had got to the point where you just uncovered an empire, a mass of just wealth and properties and all of those things that the Agape Ministries, i.e. Rocco Leo, had amassed before, as I said, absconding the country. So before we get too far in, just take us back a step and just remind us, what did that empire consist of?
Well, what you've got to remember is when people sue one another, you've got to put documents into court.
Sure.
Those documents become what's known as public documents, meaning members of the media, such as myself, can apply for them and read them ahead of the court case. The ATO had done a full financial investigation. You know, we refer to them as audits.
Mm-hmm.
They had audited Agape Ministries, Rocco Leo, his girlfriend, Marie Veneziano, her brother Joe, the whole inner circle of the Doomsday Cult. And they'd filed all this paperwork with the court to say, this is what we need to talk about. And what that revealed was that the empire of Agape Ministries spanned 2 states, 8 properties, 13 vehicles, and millions of dollars in 10 separate bank accounts.
That's, and look, if nothing else, that's quite impressive.
Oh, look, Leo had properties here in South Australia. He had the church's Oakton headquarters, that palatial mansion that we've talked about. He had his own home, which was worth almost $2 million. And he had the Butterflies Cafe around the corner from where we record, here on Perry Street. In Victoria, which for our international listeners is the next state over from South Australia, 5 properties in some very nice suburbs called Sunshine and Clayton. They were either wholly owned by Leo or the Vezianos or by companies in which they held a controlling interest. You want to follow the money? It doesn't just go to things that have their names on it, but their fingers in those pies. 13 vehicles. Now have a listen to this. This sounds like a great way to start a church. 3 Toyota Taragos, 2 Mitsubishi Pajeros, 1 Ford Tray-Top utility, 1 furniture truck, a Mercedes sedan, a Mercedes van, an AMG Mercedes coupe, a Toyota Coaster bus, a Toyota dual cab tip truck, and a front-end loader.
And a partridge in a pear tree?
Well, they could probably afford to do that with the money that they had spread across the Westpac Bank and 9 different Commonwealth Bank accounts.
Yeah, right.
None of which had been broken into yet by the ATO.
Okay.
Part of this was the ATO saying, look, this is the size of what we're talking about here.
Sure.
This is the amount of financial firepower, pun very much intended, that Leo and Agape can bring to bear. We need the court to freeze all of these assets so that he can't touch them and use them.
Yeah.
And we also need you in the court to give us access to the bank accounts. A bank's not going to give up your private details without a court order.
Of course.
Even to the ATO. So anybody that's paranoid about the ATO out there, just know they need a court order first. That's what they wanted. Give us a court order and give us, unfettered access to Leo's financial history.
And they, as you said, they were also looking to freeze those accounts so they couldn't be accessed.
That's right, because think about it. Leo at this moment is in Fiji under house arrest in a very nice place to be under house arrest, a former eco resort.
Yeah.
Place that you have to raid by boat apparently. For him to get his hands on that money could be catastrophic.
Right.
Who's to say that he couldn't pay somebody off somewhere to smuggle him out by boat and vanish to another place?
Sure.
Or pay someone to turn the other way while that yacht that he's got moored sails away into the sunset.
Indeed.
Not to mention making life difficult for other people. But Leo himself actually turned up again at this point, at least by email.
Oh, okay.
You may remember from our last episode, of course, that Leo was now ready to fight all of this while he's sitting in Fijian immigration detention.
Yes.
But he decided that maybe a fight wasn't the best idea.
Okay.
He was still going to fight Martin Penny over the Butterflies Cafe, over the millions of dollars there.
Yeah.
But Sylvia Melchiori, the profoundly disabled woman who he promised to heal on the island.
That's right.
And told her if she didn't come to the island, she would be gassed, beheaded, microchipped, and otherwise completely and utterly mutilated by the imagined New World Order that was coming.
He was the only salvation for her.
Only salvation.
Sure.
And now, as a sign of good faith, he told the court, he was prepared to answer her $420,000 lawsuit with $290,000.
Okay, so my estimate says about $130,000 short as an offer of goodwill. Is that
as
what you're
an
saying?
offer, as he called it, a sign of good faith. Because I'm under no legal obligation, he wrote to the court, to give you anything. At all relevant times, the money that you gave me was a donation or a gift for the benefit of Agape Ministries, he said. So in a sign of good faith, there will be an offer to refund $290,000 that you donated without any admission of liability.
And how was that received?
That fell on deaf ears, to put it quite bluntly. Ms. Melchiori had to this point spent in excess of $40,000 pursuing Leo through the courts. There was no way she was going to stop at the $290.
And not to make too much light of this, so is deaf ears a symptom that Leo could also heal?
Probably.
It seems like he can do wonderful, wonderful sort of things medically.
Oh, look, you've got no idea what Leo's about to do as this process continues, all sorts of magical powers will be revealed as we go further in this episode.
Okay.
One thing he couldn't do, though, was erase his tax debt.
Right.
You'll remember that he lost his tax-exempt status.
That's right.
In November of 2010, the ATO handed the court a calculation. Leo, his church, the Venezianos, altogether owed $4.1 million in unpaid taxes.
Wow.
For just 2009-2010.
Sorry, so $4 million for just the 2 years?
Just the 2 years. How much income are you bringing in if your tax bill for a single year is $4.1 million.
Yeah, that's a almost an insane amount to try and understand, really, isn't it?
Yeah, the ATO said, look, they have completely failed to pay their income tax, and we are entitled under the Taxation Administrative Act to sue to recover the debt that is owed to us.
Yeah, right.
So Leo's personal debt, $1.69 million for a single year.
Well, that by its own token there, Sean, as you said, is how much revenue from a personal perspective must you be amassing to have a tax debt of that much for a single year?
Now, obviously, nobody wants to pay tax, and nobody wants to pay that much tax.
Of course.
The ATO's investigations dug a little deeper and revealed just how much effort Leo had put into avoiding that tax.
Okay.
During this period, as the tax-exempt status is gone, as he's being hunted in Fiji, as the empire is being revealed, the ATO discovered that he had used those multiple accounts to juggle the money. They found transactions that meant that every time they started looking at an account, strangely, the money moved to the next one.
Okay.
They'd look at the next one, the money had moved back. Almost like a shell game, a 3-card Monty.
I was just thinking the same. So he's shifting the sands underneath them as they're trying to see what is actually apparent.
In court, they called it a crude attempt at juggling.
So it wasn't particularly sophisticated in that sense. It was quite obvious what he was doing.
Yeah, it was a massive withdrawal from this account, and suddenly this account over here had this much money in it.
Right.
And then that account suddenly went down by exactly the same amount, and it popped up over here. Whack-a-mole?
Yes.
Very much a whack-a-mole type of
Gotcha.
thing. Leo wasn't having much luck. He wasn't able to outsmart the ATO. He wasn't able to outmaneuver the ATO. He was still locked in absolute war with Silvia Melchiori, so he made the only decision he could.
Which was?
He sent in his messenger.
Sorry, his messenger.
Every Messiah's got to have a messenger, an earthly agent that speaks for the godly one. And Leo was no exception.
Sean, he sent in a messenger.
And she would be his voice, his Metatron, if you will, for everything that was about to happen.
The messenger, Sean. The messenger.
The messenger of Agape Ministries, an Adelaide woman by the name of Catherine Conda. Keep that name in mind. She's going to be very important going forward.
Okay.
What I'd eventually discover is that Catherine and her husband Kevin were true believers.
Oh, okay.
They had been part of the Agape Ministries faithful, not the inner circle,
Sure.
the faithful, for many, many years. And despite everything that had happened, the raids, the flight overseas, they remained faithful. They remained loyal, true believers to the teachings of Agape Ministries.
Okay.
And so Catherine would turn up in court to represent Leo.
Right. So represent him in a legal sense, or represent him how exactly?
Well, initially, there was legal counsel. In
Sure.
fact, no less than Sam Doyle SC was hired by the Agape Ministries group to represent them. Now, Sam Doyle's name is very famous in Adelaide these days. He's not only the son of former Chief Justice John Doyle, but he's now a Supreme Court Justice himself.
Okay.
So we're talking top quality legal representation here.
Well, I just want to, if we can, put a quick sidebar in there, Sean, because I'm interested at that point, because I know the name Doyle, and in that sense, as you said, top quality. So we're talking expensive legal counsel here and defence. So you made the point earlier that ATO has come in and we've frozen accounts. How is Leo sitting in in Fiji with frozen accounts able to afford this kind of legal representation?
That's a really good question, and one at this point I didn't have an answer for.
Okay.
I was just as perplexed. What was also perplexing was that the lawsuit with Martin Penny was quickly settled.
Oh, okay. So interesting. So we've gone from an offer of faith, as you said, good faith in the first one,
In Melchiori, which was refused.
Yeah, which was refused. But now we're also able to settle this. So with Penny, the former cafe partner. Yeah, okay.
And you remember how violent that one was. The dispute between those men was very vicious, very nasty, very personal.
A lot of money involved, a lot of
accusations of betrayal,
Absolutely. Yes.
vitriol. But that one was easily settled. Both sides filed papers by email
Okay.
and happily walked away. Confidential settlement, all done, all finished.
Okay, so one's ticked off the books and settled.
That's right. But at the same time, Miss Conder is appearing in court, either sitting in the gallery of the court giving instructions to Mr. Doyle,
Okay.
or sometimes appearing by the bar table herself to speak on behalf of Leo.
Okay, so she's giving instruction from Leo to the legal counsel, but often at the bar table speaking as well on behalf of Leo.
That's right. And she appeared when Agape made their most audacious bid.
Oh.
They actually asked to have the Melchiori trial put off at the last minute, a week before it was due to go ahead.
Right.
Miss Conder turned up in court and said, well, we don't actually have legal counsel anymore. Hang on, you did a fortnight ago to solve the Penny matter.
Yeah.
That's right, we don't have legal counsel anymore. As a result, we need the trial postponed. Now, the court said they were extremely, extremely unimpressed by this, and in fact they asked straight out, are you playing games? Miss Conder replied, no, this is not a ploy, not at all. I've had communication with Brother Rock just hours ago, but I don't know if anybody will be able to turn up to court for the trial.
I'm a little confused at the moment, Sean.
You're not the only one. The judge, Master Mark Rice, said, this is a 7-day trial with costs of $40,000 already. To say this is unsatisfactory is an understatement. Either Leo comes and presents his case in court on Monday, or someone does it for him. He ought not be given the opportunity to vacate the trial.
Yeah, that seems odd because, as you said, $40,000. Now those costs aren't just absorbed by anyone. That's Melchiori. She's put up that money to chase the rest of her money, yeah?
That's right. That's right. She's paying counsel to turn up every single time. She's filing those documents that I'm reading. She's helping the ATO. She's getting information, talking to the ATO.
So
this
she's
is a
paying.
big deal.
She's paying more money to chase that money, right?
That's right. To get her $420,000 back, she spent almost $50,000 by this point.
Yeah. So you can understand why the judge in this case is going, no. This is not okay. This is costing, this defendant money here, or this person who's chasing this, more and more money. You need to come to the party, get your legal counsel in order. And as you said, this better not be a game.
And guess what? Nobody showed up. Trial came the following Monday. Nobody around. And so the judge said, well, that's it. I enter default judgment in favour of Miss Melchiori for $420,000. If you don't turn up to court the day you're due to be sued, you lose by default.
Right.
Simple as that.
Okay.
You've had your opportunity. You've had your chance. You don't show up, tough luck.
So quick question on that. Was the messenger in court on that day?
Nobody was in court that day for the other side. We sat and we waited. Myself, Miss Melchiori's counsel, nobody turned up at all.
Okay.
So the judge said, okay, you're done. Finished. Finally, after all this time, after all this effort, Miss Melchiori was awarded her $420,000.
Now, that sounds great on paper. The next part of that, of course, is anyone who's gone through a process like that will know that's great. You actually need to get the money out of that person, though.
You do. But here's the odd thing.
Okay.
Sam Doyle re-entered the fray.
Okay, I thought we didn't have legal counsel.
Several days after the default judgment, he turned up in court with Miss Conder in tow and asked to be given paperwork so that he could fight on Leo's behalf in the tax case. He wanted the details from the Melchiori default judgment to fight the taxation case.
Hang on. Let me get this straight, Sean. So we have Doyle representing Leo in the first case with Penny.
Yes.
We then go to a situation where Melchiori's case is going to go to court, but we no longer have legal counsel.
Yes.
That gets settled on default because no counsel's present, and yet directly after that, we have legal counsel in the terms of Doyle stepping back in to now get the details and paperwork from that case so we can start work on the tax case.
That's right, because there's still those millions of dollars in unpaid taxes.
And we're not playing games.
We're not playing games at all. Apparently.
Okay, I've seen better poker players play far better hands than this, I'm saying right now.
You could assume perhaps that maybe there's a bit of a capitulation going on. The idea that Agape's realised, look, if we just pay off Martin Penny, if we just pay off Silvia Melchiori, the real money is in the tax bill.
Okay.
That's the bit we need to fight.
And
Let's let these things go through to the keeper.
That makes sense. I think there's probably a far better way that could have been handled to do the exact same thing, perhaps. But we also probably know that Rocco Leo is not really that, I guess, engaged or considerate of anyone else's situation but his own, really.
Well, I find it interesting that you said that that would make sense.
Okay.
Because what actually happened was that Leo emailed the court again,
Oh.
asking for the default judgment to be overturned.
Oh, okay.
He had a reason.
Of course he did. Well, look, which me being a mere mortal, of course, wouldn't understand that of someone who has a direct line to God, of course. So please, the divine intuition that this gentleman has that I clearly don't share, please tell me and the rest of our listeners.
Let me tell you via the words of Judge Peter Brebner of the District Court. He read the email in court and he looked at us and he said, "They state they cannot afford representation and fled the jurisdiction because they are in fear for their lives. They state they have been threatened and that police inaction has contributed to their fears. They assert corrupt police officers are parties to the common purpose of ruining their reputations."
Okay, if I didn't know better, I'd almost be saying that Leo and therefore the Agape Ministries were claiming that the way they've been treated hasn't been just.
Wouldn't you think so?
Hmm.
Interestingly, Judge Brebner said that this was not a relevant consideration. Quote, "Much of what's in this email is, in reality, so inherently implausible that it cannot be accepted." And he dismissed it.
Okay.
From that point on, Ms. Melchiori has won.
Yes.
Now the problem comes, as you said earlier,
Yeah.
with actually getting the money.
Attaining that money, that's right.
You know, you've got to try to figure out where it is in these 9 bank. You've got to try to figure out how you're actually going to get it. You've got to talk to the ATO and say, well, this chunk belongs to me.
Yep.
That chunk is still for you for the tax bill down the track. As all of that's starting to be sorted out, a face from the past appeared
Okay.
in a most unexpected manner. Do you remember John Muhalos?
John Mihalis. Now, that name came up very early on. Originally one of the followers of the Agape Ministry.
You may remember him as the man that led to Leo being, quote-unquote, threatened by the Colombians, the heavy-armed Colombians with the guns in the back of the trunk.
That's right. So he had one of the original firearms charges that kicked all of this off.
John Muhalis, who went missing immediately after the raids, with the police holding grave fears for his safety.
He's resurfaced.
11th of April 2013, Muhalos is extradited to Adelaide from his hiding place interstate.
Okay.
Muhalos was hiding in Victoria and had been hiding since May of 2010, almost 3 full years.
Okay, so while we're thinking perhaps foul play has come across this person, he has in fact been on the missing list, but he's actually missing in action by his own hand.
And he's not hiding from the police.
Oh.
As the court finds out, he was actually hiding from Agape.
Ah.
His lawyer, Cormac McCarran, explained, he went home one day in May of 2010 to find the media on his doorstep and blocking his driveway. Later that afternoon, they had set up rigged spotlights out the front of his house. For Muhalos, that was the last straw. He packed his bags in the middle of the night, and he left.
Right.
He lived in his car until obtaining work in the fruit and vegetable industry, which afforded him a modest rented room and an isolated and lonely lifestyle. He was in a bind, his lawyer said. He could not go forward, and he could not go backward. He was starting to think about going back to Adelaide when on April 7, right around the time lawsuits are starting to get settled, right around the time Leo's emailing people, there's a telephone call. A former member of Agape calls him and says, "We know exactly where you are. We want you to come back into the fold."
Oh.
Muhalis said, "I am not interested. In fact, quote, I don't want anything to do with you people."
Okay. So he's definitely distancing himself at this point.
24 hours later, the police turn up on his door. "We've received information that you're John Mihalos and we're here to arrest you."
Wow.
Fall in with Agape or be left to the police? those were your choices. So Muhalos has been turned in by the cult.
So either turn with us or turn against us, we turn you in.
That's right.
So a lot of twists and turns there.
Daniel, you were hoping for a fairy tale ending to this whole saga?
That's what I said at the start. I was hoping we'd get a fairy tale, yes.
Well, keep your fingers crossed because here we go. The court took mercy on John Muhalos,
Okay.
gave him a good behaviour bond, said, go and live your life, you've suffered enough.
Okay, yeah.
The court closed down on Silvia Melchiori's claim, ordered that the Agape Ministries financial empire be dismantled.
Right.
Now, it took 12 months.
Okay.
Ms. Conda, the lawyers that came and went, dragged their feet, all sorts of noise about whether or not properties were going to sell at auction, all sorts of little attempts at stuttering the process.
Okay.
But in the end, by 2014, everything was sold, everything was done, no more Agape Ministries.
So we've got our Cinderella ending. Is that what you're telling me?
For 12 months.
I don't remember the 12-month clause in Cinderella, Sean. What do you mean?
In March 2015, 7 former members of Agape Ministries filed a $2.5 million lawsuit against the church.
Okay.
In their statement of claim, they said that Leo had breached their trust and reneged on his word by failing to create an outreach centre in Vanuatu where they would reside and have their needs catered to. Quote, we provided money on trust, and that trust has failed. The money should be returned to us. Leo stated he wanted to establish a mission in the South Pacific and that he had located a property to purchase in Vanuatu. He did not establish the mission as promised. The property has since been sold. We should be refunded our money, and we should also receive damages for the consequential loss of not having had access to those funds since 2009. The face of that lawsuit, the leading member of that lawsuit, Raphael Azariah.
Okay, there's another twist. I was going to say, look, that lawsuit sounds fair and reasonable on the surface. You gave that money in good faith for what it was. It wasn't used for that purpose. You should get that back. So, Raphael Azariah.
He who was the face of Agape, the man who met his love through the church, who married through the church under the eyes of Pastor Rock, who told me to my face they weren't crazy people, it wasn't a cult, there was nothing untoward about it, who told me there was no talk of an island. Now he's swearing in affidavits before the court that he was part of this group that handed over $2.5 million to purchase an island in Vanuatu for a mission where they would all live and have their needs catered to.
What else?
Of course, who appeared on Leo's behalf in court but Catherine Conda?
The messenger.
The messenger who, according to the court file, was residing at Leo's last known address.
Okay.
So she's not just taking his place in court, she's living in his house.
Okay. It was, that would have been one of the assets frozen, sold off as okay.
Well, I'm wondering at this point, what's actually left?
What is going on?
Why are people suddenly coming up and saying they want $2.5 million that it's all been dismantled, it's all gone? So, of course, I go digging through the court documents.
Yep.
And that's when I discover Universal Holdings Australia.
Okay.
After everything the ATO did, there was one bank account they missed.
Oh.
And it belonged to this mysterious entity called Universal Holdings Australia. And it had $9 million in it.
Okay, but how does Universal Holdings become part of this process?
They were a subsidiary of Agape Ministries, and their managing directors were one Rocco Leo, one Maria Veneziano, and one Joe Veneziano.
Right, okay. So now...
I said to you earlier, fingers in pies.
Sure. We just forgot to look on this shelf to find this pie.
$9 million of unclaimed money. Can you believe it? After everything else that's gone on.
Sure.
So, of course, the ATO reactivates. Well, we never got our full tax burden back because, of course, we had to make room for the money that went to Martin Penny. We had to make room for the money that went to Silvia Melchiori.
Sure.
The tax office has been a model litigant in all of this up to this point. You know, everybody else gets paid before us.
Sure.
We'll take what's left. But now there's $9 million here.
Yeah.
Let's start talking. So the ATO jumps in.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, they say the debt that is owed to us is $11 million for the entire period that Agape was tax-free.
Wow.
$8.5 million of that is personally owed by Leo himself.
So his personal worth is just astonishing at this stage.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. So let's look at the scorecard right now. You've got Raphael Azariah and the former parishioners claiming $2.5 million.
Yep.
You have the ATO saying, we're actually owed 11, but we'll take whatever's left of that $9 million.
Okay.
The Condas jump into this, not just Catherine, but her husband Kevin and a third woman, all of whom publicly announce through their court documents that they are still loyal to Rocco Leo, still loyal to Agape, but they want their money refunded as well.
Hang on, Sean. So you just talked about, let's have a look at the scorecard. Let's have a look at the playing field. Who are the players we've got in this game at the moment that want a piece of this pie?
Well, like I said, Raphael Azariah
Yep.
and the former parishioners,
Yes.
the Australian Taxation Office,
Okay.
the Condas, a third person, all of whom say that they are still loyal to Leo, and then Rocco Leo pops up again.
So hang on. So now Rocco Leo's saying, I want a piece of my own pie back.
Well, he's saying that nobody's entitled to this $9 million. This $9 million is completely and utterly his. It's got no connection to anything else. It shouldn't be used to refund anybody. It's not even tangentially related to Agape Ministries. It's not part of his tax debt. This is just my $9 million, and I'd really like to have it over here in Fiji, please.
Okay, so we've got essentially a four-way bout for this.
In our other lives, we'd call it a fatal four-way, wouldn't we?
Oh, if we have one winner, yeah, I suppose we would, Sean. I've got a question here, though. How is this happening? How's he managing this? I mean, at this stage, Rocco's still in Fiji.
Still in Fiji.
In his, and let's, home detention. Okay, we both smirk at that, we know. Home detention in Fiji, but now there's $9 million on the table. Suddenly, how is he funding the opportunity to, I suppose, to have legal counsel to represent him here?
Well, in January 2017, I'm sitting at home one Saturday night and my Facebook pings.
Okay.
And I get a message from a reporter by the name of Filippo Suselli.
Okay.
Filippo lives in the Italian-speaking regions of Switzerland.
Do you often get sort of Swiss reporters contacting you on a Saturday night? No?
Never before.
Okay.
He particularly lives in the city of Ticino.
Okay.
And he reaches out to me and he says, Sean, I hope you don't mind me reaching out to you.
Mm.
We don't know each other, but I need your help with something. I've done some Google searching and I think you're the reporter that can answer this question for me.
Did you report on some sort of recent ski trip or something, Sean? in the
Nothing
Swiss
like
Alps?
that.
No?
I said to him, look, sure, I don't understand why you're reaching out to me. He said, well, look, I'm doing some investigation into tombola.
Who is Tombola?
Well, tombola is basically a bingo night.
Right, so it's not a person.
It's
isn't
a
it?
game.
It's not Mr. Bowler.
It's not Thomas Bowler.
Okay.
It's a game. So,
Okay.
bingo nights.
Okay.
You know what a bingo night's like. Everyone gets together, things like that.
Sure.
Well, in Ticino,
Yes.
it's a massive deal.
Okay.
In Italian-speaking Switzerland, it's one of the hottest, biggest, most profitable things that you can do,
Right.
especially if you run it for charity.
Okay.
Now, he was investigating a group called the South Pacific Charity,
This just got a bit sour.
and he was particularly looking into a man called Lorenzo Ledieri,
Okay.
who was the operator of the South Pacific Charity. But when Filippo, the journalist, was doing a Google search on the directors of South Pacific Charity,
Yeah.
he hit a name that sent him to my door. He said to me in his message, "What do you know about Rocco Leo?"
Okay, hang on. So now Rocco Leo's involved somehow in Swiss bingo.
Rocco Leo's not just involved in Swiss bingo. The Doomsday Cult was rebuilding in Fiji with funding sourced from bingo nights in the Italian-speaking regions of Switzerland.
This guy, his fingers in the the international pies that he's putting his fingers into, Sean.
It gets better.
Okay.
Lettieri had been running charity bingo nights to support the South Pacific charity for 4 years as of 2017.
So that dates back to 2013-esque?
All of a sudden, it all falls into place for me. This is how every lawsuit's been funded. This is how every lawyer has been hired. This is how the Condas have been able to remain involved in this. This is where those emails are coming from, the affidavits, the dragging of the heels, the failures to sell properties. Rocco Leo has been keeping himself afloat while living in an island paradise with money sourced from charity bingo nights on the other side of the world.
I don't know whether to call this guy industrious or incestuous, Sean. This is just crazy so far.
I'll be honest, it was exciting. You don't often as a journalist get to do that big international intrigue story.
Yeah.
Filippo and I spent a couple of weeks pulling all of the bona fides together,
Yeah, right.
getting the data together. And it was insane. It was absolutely insane. South Pacific Charity had a website that was identical to another website called White Horse Ministries. You followed a link off White Horse Ministries and it took you to Agape Ministries International. It was all there in plain sight. There was no artifice. There was no subterfuge. It was just a little click, another click, another click. It reminded me of badly juggling money between accounts.
So we have gone from Adelaide to Fiji, now to Switzerland, where we're playing Swiss bingo tombola with 4 parties now fighting over $9 million, and you in the middle of an international investigation. How on earth does this all come together, Sean?
Well, I'll tell you, the day that this story broke was the day the Messiah broke as well.
Sean, I remember the day that this international investigation, your expose, broke on the front page of the Sunday Mail. In fact, we were having breakfast here in Adelaide one morning. It came out. You said, have a look at this. I read it. I looked at it. Is this legitimate? And you went, it absolutely is. And I just sat there and shook my head and said, this is just bizarre and just what is going on here? That was my response to this. What was Rocco Leo's response to this?
Look, Rocco Leo took it very, very poorly. Because once Filippo Ciselli, the journalist, and I had revealed his source of money, that source of money was cut off. All of a sudden, Leo had no pool to draw on anymore, no more tombola money for the Messiah. And so Catherine Conda came back to the Supreme Court and delivered a message to the court on behalf of Leo.
Okay.
And she said, and I'll quote here, Pastor Rocco wants it to be understood that the decisions that are to be made here are decisions that are made for all of Australia. He is a man of God, and he's telling you that if someone makes a decision against whomever is a man of God, they will personally see the hand of God move. So it's really important that people understand that to try to fight against the hand of God is futile. To make a wrong decision, well, the judgment of God can come down on a person's head that very day.
So the messenger's back and brings a foreboding doom depending upon how we decide to proceed with this case.
That could have been interpreted as a threat. Let's be fair.
Definitely.
If you do not decide this the way that Brother Rock wants it decided, the hand of God will come down upon the Supreme Court of South Australia. Now,
so how did this come down then, Sean?
Well, Justice Martin Hinton, a very learned man, was unmoved. He said, the Bible has many things to say also about tax collectors who are owed money. In accordance with the law of this country, we will determine what they are owed, and the pastor has to attend court. That's the way in which justice is done. I say this to you as the messenger. This case cannot go on. Either Pastor Rocco attends or sends a lawyer, and if they do not turn up, I will decide in favour of the ATO.
Okay.
Again, staring down the barrel of a default judgment. Leo really didn't take that well. In December of 2018, he posted one of the most venomous online screeds you'll see outside of 4chan.
Okay.
Australia will be punished with plagues unless my millions are returned with an apology. God will trigger escalating catastrophes before the end of 2018. He said, plague is looming over Australia. Warning was given so many times over the years. Unless the government authorities reinstate and return all they have appropriated from the house of God and publicly apologise to the man of God, Australia can expect that, by the end of 2018, it will be severely affected by many monumental plagues such as never seen before. Be very clear to know that you are not now fighting a mere man, but you are fighting Almighty God. We pray you make the proper and right choices.
That sounds pretty stern to me, Sean.
And he listed catastrophes,
Okay.
consequences. Heavy economic oppression of taxpayers, higher utility bills than ever before, China's silent invasion of Australian life, a rise in home invasions and car theft, especially in Victoria. Not sure what Victoria had done, but especially in Victoria.
Well.
Mortgage stress, failing crops, livestock problems, corrupt politicians secretly influencing public policy on behalf of China and gay people. And not to be outdone, he listed what had happened to the former followers who had dared to cross him. One had died of, quote, painful cancer, unquote. One had suffered bankruptcy. One had died in a head-on car crash. One he claimed had been strangled to death by her husband, who was then jailed. Two had narrowly escaped death on their honeymoon. And my favourite, one had narrowly escaped a witch's coven's satanic sacrifice ritual.
Okay, that's quite the list there, Sean. Look, I'm going to probably have a stab that next to nothing out of that was verified.
Not a whit.
Yeah,
and I did try.
Yeah,
I did actually try.
I don't doubt, if not for anything but comic value. Okay, so after all of that, sorry, is that the end of his? So I should ask, is that the end of the?
Very good of you not to try to interrupt Brother Rock. No,
Yeah.
that is the end.
Okay,
That is
great.
the
I just
end.
wanted to make sure that there was no more tirade involved.
You don't want to die of painful cancer.
Of course not. I want to make sure we hit all the word of the rock. So we know we go back to court and we've got a decision pending.
Thankfully, Justice Martin Hinton says it's time to end this once and for all. And so he divides up the final $9 million.
Mm.
The Azariahs and the people who broke with the church get their money.
Okay.
The Condors and their ally, who are still loyal to the church, get handed their life savings back as well. The remaining money gets given to the ATO. Now, the ATO can't claim it straight away. There's a different jurisdiction called tax court,
Okay.
where basically the ATO says, this is the money that you owe us.
Yeah.
If you want to fight us, come fight us in tax court.
Okay.
And so to all intents and purposes, this is the end of the Agape saga. Justice Hinton says, it's been a long road. This is the end of that road. And I hope you all get your checks for Christmas. Because this is 5 days before Christmas this
Okay.
happens.
Yeah.
You know, the birth of Jesus, who, of course, Agape doesn't believe in because there is only Brother Rock.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the lawyers actually quipped, we probably will get our money by Christmas if the gods are smiling on us.
And that seems a very fitting place to end that. So my question to you, Sean, is legally that ticks the boxes.
Yeah, in fact, had it been any less lawful, he might have had more wiggle room.
Is this outcome just?
Look, it's a hard one to say. I mean, Sylvia Melchiori had to spend $40,000 to get her money back.
Mm.
Martin Penny had to put up with years of being accused of all sorts of things before he could get his money
Yeah.
back. The Azariahs clearly had their faith broken,
Yep.
not to mention that they've lost their extended family. Who
Yep.
knows whether the Azariahs and the Bali gods speak to each other or have even found their way back. John Muhalos, living in hiding for 3 years,
Yeah.
getting turned in when he wouldn't toe the party line. And to top it all off, there's still an assault charge to this day, as of the moment of recording.
Yeah.
Rocco Leo remains a wanted fugitive from South Australian justice.
It's interesting you say that, Sean, because I just want to run through something really quickly just to see how we feel the concept of can we put a cap called justice on the top of this. So a former con man creates the Agape Ministries around the turn of the century, a new age turn of the century sort of way to believe. We amass followers, we amass fortunes, we amass firearms. Then we flee to a tropical paradise. Then we have boat raids on this resort hideaway. We then have multiple lawsuits over taxation and fictitious ideals. From there, we then have decrees of the wrath of God upon court. We then move to Swiss bingo and international investigations. After that, we break it out with 4 parties and even more decrees of horribleness coming down if we don't make the right decision. And yet at the end of all of this, we still have the fact that we've never faced assault charges, the only criminal charges we can still possibly bring against this man.
Had Leo been prosecuted for assault, had the South Australian authorities taken that extra step and tried to get that extradition order from Fiji, maybe, just maybe, all of this would have been solved years earlier.
And this is why I asked the simple question after all of that, and I wrap all of that up, is that just?
I can't see that that's a just outcome.
I
really
so.
can't.
I don't think anyone that would have been going through this process, or maybe anyone is listening, anyone that maybe has fallen out of the Agape Ministries, I would be very challenged to think they could call anything like this just.
And look, if anybody out there is thinking that this is just, what I'm looking at on my screen right now here in the studio that Daniel's about to tell you about might just give you one more piece to chew on.
Where is Rocco today? And the thing is, we don't actually know.
That's right.
Let me just fill you in on what we do know up to as long as we know. On the 12th of July in 2019, there's a ceremony in the State House in Suva where Fiji's president, the Honourable Major General Georgi Conroti, he honours Pastor Leo for his outstanding contribution to the Fijian nation for his compassionate pastoral care over the last decade in effectively lowering thousands of chronic disease cases and assisting the poor of Fiji.
Good God.
This is on, and I kid you not, the Agape Ministries International website. And the last time we hear from Pastor Leo is on the 10th of March 2020.
Which is an ominous date in itself in world history.
Absolutely. This is right about the time, obviously, we know that our pandemic of COVID-19 broke, is the last we ever hear from him on his website.
And at this point, he is still complaining about the money. He is still going on about what's owed to him. He's still demanding an apology from the, quote, Australian rulers, unquote, that he's warned. He says that Australia is going to become a fifth world nation if you do not act quickly, apologise, and give him back his money. A fifth world country.
And with that, and Pastor Leo, if you're out there, please don't smite us for this. We're just trying to bring the facts as we see them.
No, look, Pastor Leo, if you're out there, I have emailed you so many times asking for comment. I have used every available email address and website portal on anything Agape Ministries related that I can find. If you want to talk to us, we're here.
I'm sure he's got questions for you, Sean. And on that note, don't forget that our next episode will be Ask Sean Anything. So this is your opportunity to become part of the show. Do you want to know something about the cases we've covered so far? Maybe there's a piece that just sticks in your mind that you really want to question us about, or just unpack some further. Maybe you want to know something about Sean's hardest case, his weirdest case, his most rewarding experience, maybe the best Christmas present he's ever received, or even his most favourite place he's ever visited overseas. It could be on almost anything. There are going to be some limitations we know from a legal perspective, but we will try to answer anything. So you will get to become the journalist, and you get to choose what it is we ask and what it is you want to know from Sean himself. Please send your questions through to justlawfulpodcast@gmail.com, and we're going to get as many of those as we can. I don't know what we've actually roped ourselves in for. I know I put this idea forward. I'm now wondering how this is going to play out.
Yeah, this is on your head here.
Help me out here. Apparently it's on my head. We're going to find out. Until then, thank you everyone who's listened to our broadcast on 5AA, or if you've listened to us on both iTunes and Spotify. Please go there, rate, review, subscribe. Help get us out to the podosphere, as we say. If you want to contact us and leave some feedback, please, at Just Lawful Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, or at Just Lawful Pod on Twitter. Of course, for the Ask Sean Anything episode, at justlawfulpodcast@gmail.com. You can email your questions there. If you want to follow Sean and all of his work with Adelaide's True Crime, you can do that at Sean Fuster on Facebook and Twitter. And of course, as we sign off from here, we want to remind you one more time, and Pastor Leo, hopefully if you're listening as well, enjoy our work, but don't become our work. And we'll speak to you next time on the next episode of Just Lawful.